Welcome to the Heart of Soul podcast, an exploration of who you are, what you are, and why you are, offering new ways to investigate age-old questions at the heart of you. Hi, it's Joseph, and thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. Today, deconstructing a passage from an enlightened teacher and making Stace play Guess the Name. You too can play along at home, of course. The seduction of shakti and why sexual abuse happens so commonly among neo-Buddhist teachers. And just a quick reminder, coming up soon in Eric Grace's Clubhouse, Soulful Unfoldments with Eric, myself, and Gertrud Wunschmann. We'll be exploring what it feels like to be here as soulful selves while fielding and responding to questions from members of the audience on Clubhouse in the Holy Human House. That's WHOLLY. That's 11 a.m. Pacific time, Saturday, December 14th, in the final couple weeks of 2024. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and thanks for listening, or if you're on YouTube, for watching. Greetings and welcome forward, everybody. Hello, Stace. Welcome forward to you.
Thank you.
We have something, I have something fun planned today, and I let Stace a little bit in on the plan. I teased this 2 episodes ago, I think. And,
two. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I was rereading a book, and always interesting how you can reread a book and it can show up different because you're a different reader at any given time. And this was an example of that. This just jumped out at me, and I was using it to put myself back to sleep in the middle of the night. And I had to stop and bookmark it and go, I got to bring this to the podcast. So we're playing a little game. This is a Joseph show and tell, and I'm going to read 900 words, which on paper takes about 5 or 6 minutes to read. And I'm going to invite Stace to stop me at any time because there's no way I can read all 900 words and then we debrief it. So stop me whenever you want. And okay. I may stop and ask you what you think about this. Stace doesn't know who wrote this, and he hasn't heard it already. So this is let's see what Stace's reaction. It's just, they have this is like a meme culture thing where it's like, professional musician reacts to listening to the Sex Pistols or, whatever. And you see their face and hear what they get to see.
Wait, that's a great metaphor.
Yeah, that's a real thing. They do that.
Oh, yeah. No, but I mean, it applies to this dynamic here. Exactly. Oh,
yeah, we could do a whole thing. And then what the first thing I wanted to do, and which I'll include here, is one of the things that you get to not just react to, but you can guess. You see if you can name the spiritual teacher.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So that's bonus points. Okay,
bonus points.
So, and you home listeners can do that as well, of course, and be reacting to what you're hearing. Okay, so the only setup I'm going to give you is the topic, the setup for this is the teacher is talking about how to integrate an awakening after it happens.
Oh boy.
That was
the topic. There's a ripe one, boy. That's a low-hanging fruit.
Yes,
right
just
there,
the concept of does an awakening need to be integrated and what does that actually mean, I'm sure is something we'll talk about. But
from an awakened, not pre-dual perspective.
Yes, right. Okay, so here's the first paragraph. At these times, what's important is to avoid what I call spiritual bypassing, dismissing the thought, ignoring the fact that we got caught in a moment of re-identification. We often use non-dual language to this end. We tell ourselves, oh, that's just identification. It doesn't matter, since there's nobody to do anything anyway. Everything's happening spontaneously, after all. This is a subtle yet effective way of hiding from our own experience. It allows us to avoid dealing with our continuing tendency to re-identify. What is important is to have the willingness to look at these moments of identification clearly and honestly. What do you think so far?
Well, I'm already getting cigarette smoke in my eyes. So let me just reflect what I thought felt I heard. That a form, what this teacher is saying is a form of bypassing is to allow arising re-identifications to dissipate too soon, because
or that to
dismiss them according to the teaching.
Yeah.
Because those arising re-identifications down into over-attachment to dualism have data in them, not just to let them arise and dissipate. So he wants us to notice those and then re-engage, re-engage such that they're not just dissipated but embraced and then let go or something. That's what I
well, yeah, the ultimate outcome we're not really clear. We'd have to intuit what that ultimate goal is. But so far, so good, right? Then he would say, don't bypass.
Right. That's right.
Get curious. Okay, so far, and then we'll see what happens with that. Continuing on, there are many ways to engage in self-inquiry. I found writing to be helpful to me, both before awakening and for a certain period of time afterward. If I noticed myself slipping back into identification, I would go to a coffee shop with a pad of paper and a pencil, and I would start to write about it. Writing about what happened actually helped me enter into the thought pattern that had triggered the re-identification. I would define exactly which thought or belief had caught me and what the inner worldview of that thought was.
Okay.
Want to say anything at this point?
Yeah, just a short one. So he's looking to really as fully as possibly embrace the content of the arising identification. By writing, he really gets down to deconstructing or decoding its message in a sense, so that it doesn't entrap the seeker, or entrap the newly enlightened person into either too tight of a compensatory over-identification or too little of a dissipation orientation.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, continuing on. For example, if we do something that makes us feel silly or embarrassed, our mind might have the thought, I shouldn't have done that, or that was stupid of me. If you take a thought that's small and you start to really open it, you'll see right away that thought and feeling are linked. One is actually the doorway into the other. The thought, I shouldn't have done that, comes with a feeling, perhaps the feeling of embarrassment or anger. In this, we see the inner worldview of the thought and how it pulls us into identification.
Whoa. He just pathologized the glue of the situation to feeling.
Yeah.
Feeling is what glues us or fuses us to the identification.
Oh, I didn't even get feeling. That. Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, wow. You sort of skipped a step. Let me first say, because I want to say maybe there's more to go into with that. But the first thing is the equivocation of thoughts and feelings here.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And that feelings are sort of dubiously being asserted as a subset of mind.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That which is classic Buddhism /Zen / that domain.
But what I do like, though, that pursuant to that, a version that makes that inappropriate equivocation has a reasonable truth to it, that the feeling, even if it's a subset of mind, has the power to glue you to the identification.
Right. So then we would say, well, how does it have that power?
Exactly right. Yeah. And of course, we talk about the difference between feeling and emotivity.
Yeah.
So that's another whole discussion. But so far, he's perfectly, if it's a he, perfectly in alignment with his own paradigm or her paradigm. So far, no contradictions internally to his worldview in anything he has said here so far.
Okay, let's continue on. It is important that we don't use this type of inquiry simply as a mental tool. If we do that, we start to understand everything on the mental level. The problem is the mental level is often disconnected from the emotional level. Right? Yeah, interesting. Given the previous paragraph, now there's an emotional level that's different than the mind. You just implied that feelings and emotions were happening in the same level. Right?
And that's not so hidden. That's not so veiled, that contradiction. That's really clear.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem is the mental level is often disconnected from the emotional level without saying anything about what those are. We may understand something clearly in our mind, but emotionally we may still be conflicted about it. Well, now I'm wanting to interrupt. Well, how would that be possible if emotions are a subset of mind? It would all be about
Yes.
clarity of mind, then the emotions would get clear as well, right?
Yeah, you couldn't say that unless there was an equivocation between the emotion, what he or she's calling the emotional, is simply a subset of dualistic. It's just a softer dualism, but it's still a dualism.
Right. Okay, yeah, good point. If you reduce it to
Yeah.
dualism, where we would say the domain of emotivity is unilism, right? Unilistic,
Yes,
not dualistic.
not even a soft dual. It's a whole other
Yeah,
domain,
you're right,
and
but
that's what's
different.
been missed by the East
And
all
that's
these
why it has to be
centuries.
dealt with in this super pure homeopathic way, because it can't be
Exactly.
cut up into pieces and reasoned with.
No.
Yeah. Okay, continuing on. When we inquire, it is important that we are using both body and mind, both feeling and thought. We must see which thoughts generate which feelings and which thoughts are generated from feelings. It is a cycle. A thought creates a feeling, and that feeling creates the next thought, which then creates the next feeling.
Okay. Well, that's pretty acutely accurate in if you're tracking the mechanism. But
Mm-hmm.
what space is that mechanism unfolding inside of?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Right? What allows that sequence to continue? An over-attachment to either or both feelings and thoughts? In
Mm-hmm.
other words, what if there's no if there's a non-dual substrate to this whole thing that this person is saying, then in what space does that beautifully articulated feeling can create a thought can create a feeling, and it can go on in a cycle forever, and you could get that could just keep continuing. But what space? That's the question I would ask this teacher right now. What space does that beautifully articulated truth, which we wouldn't disagree with,
Uh-huh.
inside of that picture? It's not bad, but what allows that to occur against a non-dual background? This person's already semi-awakened, I assume. I mean, this person, but he's advising, or he or she's advising a seeker, right?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
an already awakened being.
Oh no, both. I mean, the
Both.
this
Okay.
chapter it's specifically about post awakening integration.
Ah,
So the audience is
okay.
for people who've had an awakening and are feeling kerfuffled or discombobulated about it.
Okay, well then then if that's the title, then we get to hold this author to this question. What the non-dual substrate or space that allows us to be meta, to not fusing to the thought feeling spiral, can't do any operations on that by the nature of the non-dual, right?
Right.
So by this person's assuming that just paying attention to another level or two of the nature of arising phenomenological possible attachments and identifications. Uh, this is a never-ending smoke that keeps arising without a fire,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right. Yeah, where are these coming from? Or
Right.
the stray thoughts and feelings, what is driving them? That's similar to the question of what is this all happening inside of?
Exactly right. So if the person's already awakened and there's some momentum to the attachments to the dualistic state, I would guess that teacher would answer that question with, well, the over attachment is creating the process that we're trying to describe, not to attach to. In other words, there's already attachment
Mm-hmm.
going on if the smoke is arising, but there's certainly no fire causing this smoke. So I'm anxious to see what the solution is here,
That's
because
what we're getting to. Okay, perfect.
he or she is describing a fairly acutely clear dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
but let's see where more data gets
Yeah,
us.
I'm so glad that you're having an even better reaction to this than I anticipated. This is wonderful. Okay. When I would go to the coffee shop with a pad of paper and a pencil, I would get very specific about exactly what the thought was that caused the moment of re-identification, and I would start to write about it. I would look at exactly how that thought viewed the world. To do that, I would have to enter into how I felt. I would have to zero in on what believing that particular thought, be it condemnation or embarrassment or what have you, generated at the feeling level. Then I would enter into the feeling and allow myself to feel the feeling.
Okay, wait. Who, who's the I and
Right.
who's the myself?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Wait, if we are inquiring from the not I, what I goes into this question? The wheel of identification can't be doing it because we're observing that
We're
wheel of
observing an
identification.
identification, which is an over-eyeing. So who's the
Ex-
I that is looking at how and why that's happening?
this is where now I'm getting foamy. It's like, wait. So far up until that point, until what am I? What is going on inside of the eye of who? That this is post-awakening.
Yeah.
So you can't have that which you're observing be the observer post-enlightenment.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So there's a rudimentary voice dialogue therapy that is kind of emerging here, right? He's talking about going into the worldview of the feeling, which gives it quite a lot of substance. And who's doing that?
That's the thing. I can get the focus is on an unenlightened arisement, but who's the enlightened I doing the inquiry here? Who's writing? You see, that completely contradicts using reasonable language against a reality that has no substance.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of dancing around. Like if you look at this if you start with the assumption that the question of what am I is really important, and then you look at this, you see a lot of dancing around that question. That this is what happens when you don't define what the I is.
Oh, exactly, Joseph. In a sense, this is enlightened gaslighting.
Yeah.
It's literally beside the point. The teacher wants us to keep focusing on something that is already defined as illusory. So the inquirer must not be illusory to make the point of this whole treatise.
Right, unless it's one illusory part investigating another illusory part, in which case, why would you entertain that? How could there be any value that comes from one illusion interviewing another illusion?
Yeah, how is that not a meta identification attaching to an arising identification?
Right. Wouldn't that reinforce the identification if you have an illusion validating the illusory reality?
Exactly. The non-dual has no I. How could it be doing this? There's no awakened being going on in this thing that he's constructing. So, whoa, dude.
Okay, it
whoever
gets better.
You are.
It gets better. The next step, so what the last sentence was, then I would enter into the feeling and allow myself to feel the feeling. The next step would be to ask myself about the belief pattern of the feeling. How does this feeling see the world? How does this feeling see self? What's the worldview? What I started to see was that each thought and feeling contained a world in and of itself, a whole belief structure. Through a willingness to enter the feeling, I discovered that the feeling had a voice. I could hear that voice in my mind, and I would discover that it had specific beliefs and ideas. The plot thickens, huh?
Okay. So I'm getting a migraine on top of a migraine here because how can I say it? Read that last three sentences again.
What I started to see was that each thought and feeling contained a world in and of itself, a whole belief structure. Through a willingness to enter the feeling, I discovered that the feeling had a voice. I could hear that voice in my mind, and I would discover that it had certain specific beliefs and ideas.
Okay. Again, who is the I that's noticing this?
Yeah, it's more of the same from before.
More of the same, but there's a more nefarious twist in it, because can I counter reflect from identity's point of view here, which I kind of been doing it already.
You can say whatever you want. Of
okay.
course, that's what you're here for.
All right. What everything this person says would align with identity's opinion that the I who is doing this inquiry is the I of the soul.
Right.
That would make it all sober.
Yeah, that's right.
All the words would fit perfectly.
It would eliminate all contradictions.
Mm-hmm. It would all the worldview issue, the glue of the emotion, trapping the objective thought into a grip or something. All of that would fit because the I who's doing the inquiry has substance, and we would say the soul I is doing that.
Yeah.
And what this person is discovering post awakening is what we do up front.
Yeah.
We help the soul I investigate the protector's eye's attachments to conditioned responses, including worldviews and feelings. So he's trying to bring in a psychologically coherent thing that vibes okay with the non-dual ultimacy.
Yeah. That's what I found so interesting. Like this teacher, post a very deep awakening, found himself basically needing EBE.
Yes.
So created a version of it for himself, right down to the pen and paper. You know?
What my heart opens about is that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. But that's right.
But post-enlightenment, but it wasn't triggered by pesky arising dualistic state fusions.
Well, because you were meta to the paradigm. You were meta to Zen.
Exactly. The tabula rasa that happened, I assume would last, we said another podcast, the rest of my life. But when unalism returned, a divine presence, that included the I of my soul, such that from that point on, I completely reframed non-dual enlightenment as simply, in one level, a tabula rasa so deep, if scorched earth version like I had, so deeply that it allows space for the soul I to enter human experience. It actually liberates the soul I. It doesn't negate the soul I, it liberates it.
And when you saw the architecture of the emotional body, you were seeing the soul. You were seeing the contractions in soul itself.
Exactly. And I didn't know if I was projecting old conditioning onto what I was seeing. I had to always ask myself and question myself that way. But there's a reality that arises when there's a persistency of pattern that yields activity that liberates the pattern. So if you can liberate the pattern by taking the pattern seriously, then that pattern was real enough to be real, and not just a projection.
It's not just a random arising thing.
Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't see change from just projective structures that I projected on. You wouldn't see fundamental change.
That's some really good science meets metaphysics meets psychotherapy thing right there. Because you say that very naturally and easily, but that's some pretty sophisticated thinking. Like, well, how do you just answered the question? How do you tell the difference between a random arising thought and something that has substance that you really need to deal with? Which is a question an awakened person won't necessarily ask, because you can just keep transcending it, and that's what the paradigm says.
Exactly. There's no I left to do projections. So you're caught really in the basement at the same time you think you're on top of a mountain naked. You're descending into a basement thinking it's pro peak experience or resonates with the peak experience. When this person has to contradict their own paradigm to do what we would call EBE post-enlightenment, but without the meta, without the soul I.
Yeah, and without another person helping you. Yeah.
Exactly. Another center of being helping us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, there's 3 more paragraphs. This is the pièce de résistance.
Okay.
Very often we find that the beliefs and ideas contained in our thinking and feeling come from our childhood. Plot thickens. They may come from very early memories of being embarrassed or put down or shamed or terrified or angered or saddened. If we start to investigate in a meditative way, where body and mind are linked, our inquiry can start to uncover these deep inner experiences. You can't just think about it. You can't just say, this is a thought, I know it's not true, and be done with it.
Well, I like that statement,
Yeah.
but the context out of which that nice content sentence comes is utterly nonsensical, because it would take an unenlightened aspect to do this. An enlightened aspect would not investigate childhood impressionism and conditions, because it's already transcended
Not from
those
pure Zen,
conditions.
in a pure Zen paradigm, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in a pure Zen. Well, I'm always coming from scorched
Sure,
earth.
yeah. Well, you have to, in a way, to sort of
Offset.
For the sake of comparison,
Yeah.
you have to start with what the pure version of it would be.
Yeah, Advaita Vedanta is a softer version, and an Advaita Vedanta picture would give more room for the justification of everything
Yeah.
this person is saying.
Yeah.
So this would not be a Zen enlightenment. This would be more in the direction of Advaita Vedanta.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That's what I would say. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Two more paragraphs. This is the penultimate paragraph. I would sometimes spend hours in the coffee shop refusing to leave until I had gotten to the bottom of one single thought pattern. I knew if that thought could hook me into re-identification, then another thought could hook me in again.
Whoa.
There's a lot there.
Wait. Wow.
I knew that if that thought could hook me into re-identification, then another thought could hook me again. It's a really interesting relationship to dualism right there.
Well, yeah. And I'm stuck on the dualism of, I counted 3 I's and 2 me's. What's going on here? There's no I in an awakened state. Who is talking? Who's right now? He wants his cake and eat it too. This person.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to acknowledge he's had a real awakening. This is clear. I can get that for the first couple paragraphs, but he's descending into a contradiction of his own awakening. If he can't tell that the I, that's the I and the me in that last sentence structures belies an awakened state. But when after my own scorched earth, a thought arose, there was no problematicism to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't something to solve, because in those moments, the solution would have to have been in the pre-awakened state.
Yeah, who's seeing the thought as a problem in the first place?
Exactly. So it gets more detailed, screwed down into contradictive morass here, even though it's got an enlightened wind around it.
Yeah, to me, that sentence, that as usual, that's the way more sophisticated treatment of this last sentence. To me, what hits me, I knew if that thought could hook me into re-identification, then another thought could hook me again, has a kind of fear in it. First of all, it's future looking, which
it's projection.
It's future projection, and it has similar to I remember Andrew Cohen would talk about. There's this sort of like maintenance of a state sort of vibe to it. Like, what is it? There's a sense of, I'm intuiting or interpreting a little bit, but it's like, if one thought could hook me into re-identification, then another thought could hook me again. Like, so what? So you'll deal with that when that happens. What is it that you're needing to maintain? First of all, who's the you that thinks that's not okay and has a horizontal persistence temporally, that the future you is concerned and the current you are both have the same concern, right? That's a horizontal persistence of an I that Zen doesn't have. And then there requires a willful effort to do something about. He's not talking about and it just arose in me that this is what I should do. It was like, no, I willfully sat in the coffee shop and wouldn't leave until I got to the bottom of it. That's will.
Who's the I driving that will steering wheel?
Yeah.
And as soon as you, that's bad enough, but you're exactly right, Joseph. If a projection into a dread that might happen in the future,
it has a dread vibe to it for sure.
it's a total drunk relative to true awakening. It's a drunk statement.
Yeah.
You can't. You're not in time. What the Maui guy that just passed, the
Ram
wonderful
Dass.
teacher Ram Dass, he said his teacher lived in eternity.
Mm.
That's almost a direct quote.
Mm.
Timeless. This person is living definitely still in time if they've got a dread about a future moment.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm
It's like if you
sorry.
ask an enlightened person what they want to eat tomorrow night, like they'll be like, what's tomorrow night? What? Or, like,
Yeah, you're too
how can I
present.
possibly know that now?
You're too present in timelessness
Mm-hmm.
to have that statement have any sobriety whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So this person would not qualify as fully enlightened at all or awakened in identity. They're part way, maybe 2/3 of the way, but
Mm-hmm.
man, they're stuck. They're still ensnared in the very premise that drives this treatise.
Yeah, and this is the process that they created to like willfully push the enlightenment through their system to sort of deliver the awakening to the parts that were still gripping, which we would identify as emotional body issues that shouldn't be subjected to that.
Yes.
It's not the right
And
medicine for
that,
them.
oh, exactly. And that only becomes that configuration that you just said if you've reversed the sequence, where if you do all that emotional body feeling based over attachments before you awaken,
Right,
none of this would come up afterward.
right.
None of it. And even for myself, I didn't start doing EBE, Esh first, and then the next iteration and the third iteration we're into now. Um, uh, I awakened, but I had divinity as the context for my non-dual awakening. And
Right.
that's not true for the 99% of awakened beings out there. They
Otherwise, they'd
don't
have a lot
have
of meta
both.
to their own paradigm. That's how you had the meta
Yeah.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I could pull off having to do, oh, it was fucking murder, as you know,
Yeah.
to try to get anything underneath my own protector eye because of the enlightenment. At the same time, enlightenment gives room for the soul eye. It also emblazons
Yeah.
the band was emblazons the protector eye, who's a subset of the soul eye. So it's a nightmare to try to extricate. It's like you die to the eye, and then the eye's in the grave, still alive, and it's clawing to
Yeah.
have a say in things
Yeah.
after it's been.
Instead
You
of
know,
a warrior, you have an undead warrior that like is
oh, that's great.
way more difficult to deal with because they're just impervious to all sorts of things.
And look, Joseph. Oh, even though we have a paragraph to go, this is why identity's point of view, all this insobriety that we're kind of spotlighting, and the person just handing it to us on a gold platter, not even a silver platter, is all a product of awakening via the governing dynamic of transcendence of duality.
Yep.
When you base non-dual awakening on the processing, the emotive terror of not being, all this becomes hoopera. It becomes schnick-schnack, like they say in German. It's just schnick-schnack. So this person is obviously she is in a lifetime where they've not fully had a prepared personhood prior to the awakening.
Yep.
And all of these are perturbations and evidences that the personal I, the conditioned personal I, was never healed before the awakening. So if you have an awakening before that happens, this is what it gives room for, all this contradictive spiraling in circles without any resolution.
Yeah, stuff that can't be transcended. So you have to keep attending to it until either you become very willfully transcended, which is going to have personality level consequences. The person would turn into, well, when we reveal who it is, we'll talk about that. Let me keep reading. So
Okay.
I'll
One more
back up.
paragraph.
Yeah,
Okay.
1.5.
Yeah.
Let me reread that one just so we have context. I knew that if that thought could hook me into re-identification, then another thought could hook me again. The more awake we become, the more that re-identification hurts. It's like being pulled forcibly out of heaven back into hell, which is a pretty serious judgment about duality.
Well, you just hellified duality, meaning it's not included in the awakened state.
Right. Yes, there's the
This,
non-dual is better than dual dichotomy.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
either or. It's not an and.
Yeah.
It's not an and.
It's like
Yeah.
being pulled forcibly out of heaven back into hell. When you feel like you're in hell, you'll do anything you can to release yourself. Who's trapped and
And
where
who's
in
doing the
the
releasing?
illusory self is trapped in the
Oh
illusory
no.
world?
Well, but who's the one trying to rescue it or
Yes,
clear
that
it
must
up? I
also
mean,
be an illusion in pure
oh,
Zen.
oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
So
Oh,
okay,
okay.
last paragraph. So I would apply this inquiry process with great diligence. I would stick with it until I saw all of the way through a moment of identification. I would know that I had gotten there when it completely released from my system. Now that's important. That's the end point.
Oh,
I would know that I had gotten there when it completely released from my system. Let me read one more sentence.
whoa.
I had to revisit certain patterns of thinking, feeling, and reaction on several different occasions. Each time the process of insight would go deeper, revealing more and more. As it did, I would get down to the core beliefs, thoughts, and feelings. What was required, wait for it, was a willingness to stick with the
Oh,
inquiry so that the illusion could be pulled up by its root. There he actually names that it's an illusion. That's, I think, the only time illusion gets used. So
whoa.
diligence, willingness, stick with it until I saw until it releases. There's identifying it as an energy to be released.
Now I'm really sad for this person.
Yeah.
I mean, we can be astounded by unsober metaphysics, but now my heart just went, oh, Bud, no.
Yeah.
Uh, it, the an awakened being doesn't have an operating eye to do that last bit of thing. All the eyes there. Who is the I? Why doesn't this person can't see that there's an ultimate contradiction? It's certainly not the impersonal ocean that Advaita says the individual illusion drops into and disappears.
Yeah.
There's a substantive I, meaning that's fine. Okay, but look, whoever this person is, I would say, look, your persistent use of I, will basedness, judgments of duality shows you're not fully awakened. That's okay. You're close, bud.
Mm-hmm.
But the roots that have to be pulled out are very different roots than you think need to be pulled out.
Yeah.
Wow. It just makes me sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
Wow.
We're laughing at the
No,
metaphysics, but the tragedy of that
no.
this is a person who's quite confused and has
Yeah.
dead-ended a paradigm. It's really sad.
Well, God, Joseph, the languagification of this unsober treatise, I could see would be so impressive
Mm-hmm.
to devotees because this person is, in one way, both objectifying and finding value in the very illusion that the awakening is supposed to rid yourself of.
Yeah, and it's committed, it's diligent, and
Oh,
it's just a more subtle, he starts out by saying this is how to avoid spiritual bypassing. And it's true. This is how to avoid really obvious, gross spiritual bypassing. But this is more subtle spiritual bypassing by our standards.
yeah, by our standards,
And
but
actually not that subtle because
oh
it
no, it
could be
just
way
slams
subtler.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm metaphorically, every time you read up another paragraph, I'm in the middle of a blackberry bush, uh, retaining the scorched earth thing at the same time from my real soulful personhood,
Mm-hmm.
seeing how this person has not integrated. There's the title
Yeah.
exposed right there. This would not be integration in identity. This is disintegration because the very premise that's driving the treatise is unsober.
Yeah.
Who's the I making this entire inquiry?
Yeah.
There's no I that would say that. There's just silent wonderment that wouldn't go this deep. We do all this deep stuff
Yeah,
beforehand.
awareness
So
itself would be
awareness,
beholding it, right? No, not an
exactly.
I. Yeah.
Not an I, just awareness. But an audience who desperately wants to find an answer to integrating, awakening, and humanity is going to not catch the
Yeah.
contradictive dynamics here and just lap it up. Look, he's talking about integrating spirit and or it's not spirit, but awakening and humanity.
Yeah.
And this person, from our point of view, no, they're not. They're cycling. Uh, but this is why it's so. I'm in the middle of a blackberry bush with all the thorns because I describe. Remember, Joseph? I used to describe coming out of the scorched earth enlightenment that I had into making local issues of stuckness healable was like coming off naked on top of a mountaintop and climbing into a grave 6 feet under.
Yeah.
That correlates to this person saying, then you're dragged out of heaven into hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's something you do ideally before you awaken. And so because we can't control when people who have had past life enlightenments in any one step of the personhood process, it pops. We've got a world of complexity then to have to deal with while staying on the personhood track, because these are the kinds of questions exactly that come up that he's trying to talk about.
Yeah.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Complete sense. And the awakening I had was not complete or as deep as the one you went through, but it was deep enough for me to experience that same coming off the mountain thing. I believe it. I remembered EBE prior to that, and afterwards it was like, well, it's way easier to not be in my head about this, but it's way harder for me to care.
Oh,
I didn't care about the feelings that were there. It was like they didn't matter, and I had to work really hard to make them matter again.
To make them real enough to matter,
exactly.
Right?
To make everything real enough to matter.
Yeah, they're just wafting wisps of smoke.
Yeah.
But when you have, like you say, you had the integrity to go, wait, somewhere these have substance, somewhere these matter, somewhere I have to care about them. Yeah. This person tries to do that, but uses a utility that's unsober.
And this is the same. It's the same in sobriety and problem. I mentioned before when I worked with a Buddhistic psychologist. She used a lot of different models, but she was in many ways a Buddhistic psychologist. And so she did internal family systems and would work with parts in me. But what I noticed is I stopped working with her at a certain point, and I started working with Bree when I re-entered the identity world. And within a month, more emotion came out of me than had in like 3 years with this other person. And I was like, well, why would that be? Because the parts know if the therapist's intention is to have them be transcended, the parts aren't going to come out. They respond to someone who sees and feels them as real, not just someone who's entertaining the idea of, oh, you're an illusion who thinks you're not an illusion. We'll give you some room so that you can disappear. And that's what this teacher was doing as well. And it doesn't cut as deep because the realness of the emotivity knows when it's not being taken seriously and isn't, because that's what happened with parents.
Exactly the same
so
thing.
They're not going to come out.
Nothing got validated.
Yeah.
No. But the protector eye is going to smell that.
Yeah.
And just dance.
Yeah. It says, oh, this is an improved version about what my parents did with my emotions. So, okay, let's try some more sophisticated levels of release, but this isn't going to heal anything. So
no. And you just made me remember a moment that I jocularly referred to as the day that I lost most of my hair. And that was talking to a Buddhist psychologist. So I said, let me get this straight. And this person says, oh, I could see this. I read this out and kind of felt it here, but I read it out here. Oh, I'm going to teach this teacher something. They were really heating up, So
I've never done that. I do that so often. We should give it a name.
At any rate, I said, let me get this straight. So the entire premise of Buddhist psychology is to have conflicted emotional, mental, energetic states, give them enough substance to see in the end that they don't really exist. Because in that way, you're aerating substance until at some point you're giving room for the aeration, venting of the substance of the conflict subpersona, whatever you want to call it. But the end game is to prepare them to see that they don't exist. Is this what am I getting this? And this person said, exactly.
Ugh.
And that is when I knew that the West, this journey from the East to the West had become a poison pill.
Yeah, that's toxic. Yeah.
Oh man, it's how they can. Oh, I used to say in different talks, I'd say, so here's a Buddhist psychologist. I want you to pay me money so I can show you that all your conflicts are over attachments and over identifications to trauma of some kind in your past. And I'm going to rid you of your trauma, not from the trauma's actual bandwidths, but by the space that exists, the not space that surrounds the trauma, to see that its attachment to its as a solid thing is actually it's not the content of the trauma that's got you, it's the context within which that trauma is held. So I want you to pay me to liberate your conflict into nothingness.
Yeah.
I mean, and I felt tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people go, yeah, talk about a spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
That leaves the content of those traumas literally unfelt, unrecognized as real. And then you call yourself awakened?
Mm-hmm.
And this is, in one way or another, exactly the metaphysical basis, right, Joseph, of renunciation of the human.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to, if you are, I met some folks recently where they were baked in a renunciative context, but they felt the limit of that, and then but still inside they rejected the renunciation, but stayed in the bandwidth of the energy release, and that puts them in a really tough place to unplug, because they let go of the renunciation context, but the content, I felt it and it released. I felt it and released. We would say feel and release is exactly like what an ecological fisherman does. He fishes for the fun of it and then puts the fish back in the water.
Oh, wow. I've never heard you. That's a great metaphor. Yeah. Catch and release enlightenment, catch and release healing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And nothing is fed.
Yeah.
Nothing is fed. It's just a game. And how many teachers have we heard that call it a game overtly?
Yeah.
So, this is hurtful, and I want to scratch my skin off, and because to the unawakened wanting to awaken, or to the post-awakened, say people in the audience, Joseph, who have had some event but don't know how to integrate it, and this is the solution to that. It's just going to roil them in deeper waters of insobriety, of consciousness insobriety.
Yeah, the bigger question is, why has the awakening not integrated?
Yes.
Could
it be by the assumptions of your paradigm?
Yeah, because you haven't done any emotional work, and now your protector is going, how come this enlightenment hasn't just washed all of that away? It washed a bunch of stuff away, but this remains. And the solution is use more will to push that enlightenment shakti, or whatever you want to call it, into the corners of you that are still resisting it. Doesn't sound very enlightened to me.
No, and as Bree and I were talking about this recently, you just have to keep catching and releasing, catching and releasing, catching and releasing. Don't you want to be done with having to catch and release? This is like what they do is they mow the lawn right down to the shortest thing, and then it grows back because they do not get at the roots. What this person called the roots, we would call the blades of grass,
Yeah.
not the roots.
Right. Definitely not
So,
roots. No.
oh God.
Yeah.
Oh,
And the
oh,
proof that he thought he was getting to the root was there's a release.
yes.
Because, everything's
No.
energy and it released, but then it came back. Oh, yeah, well, what arises just arises. That just happens until it doesn't.
It means the roots are still there to create the new
Yeah.
arising. How is this not clear? I honestly I'm heartful about people got to go through what they got to go through. I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. Everything is good for someone. These people who get hooked into this solution for integrating awakeness and
Yeah.
humanness are going to have to untie this Gordian knot of
Yeah.
confusion between languagification of something that's not languageable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they haven't had a full awakening in the first place. They just had
Yeah.
something that displaced the I, and now they're in a confused state and need a
Yeah.
very different healing track.
And related to that, I think the reason that one of the reasons this passage jumped out at me like it did is because when I had the awakening I had in 2019, it put me on an
Uh-huh.
18-month consciousness wheel where it felt like I was on hard hallucinogens every day for about 8 to 10 hours a day. It was just, one of the things I think I was supposed to learn was no longer being attached to states, because it was
Yeah.
every day it was different and it was just like rolling down a hill. And then it
Yeah.
ground to a halt. And there have been, and that was right around the time where I went back to EBE to deal with what was left.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think I sort of subtly judged myself for was needing to do that. That the
Oh.
grind, and so when I saw this, it was like, oh, it's because I couldn't do this, because this would have been the
Yeah.
prescription to,
Yeah.
well, yeah, whatever's arising, just transcend that. But I already knew too much to do that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
couldn't have
Yeah.
done
You
that.
couldn't you couldn't look away from what you'd already
No.
felt known. Yeah.
Yeah, on like a soul level. Like it didn't even occur to me to try to, I mean, I'd already done emotional work with a pen and paper about these kinds of things. So just coming at those things in this kind of transcendent, energetic way, it wouldn't
Yeah.
even been conscious to me. It just wouldn't make any sense. Like what? That would be emotive parts. You can't transcend them. That doesn't make.
Not according in other paradigms they say you
Just
can, but
sure, yeah, but
not
this
in
never.
ours.
Even though I read this a while back, it never appealed to me. I
Yeah.
never even would have tried it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
you knew too much. You knew
yeah,
too
so
much.
now what's happening is the emotional movements that happen give that wheel more turns. Like just in this
Yeah.
last week, I haven't been doing any inquiry or meditation at all, and suddenly I'm having these spontaneous, intense experiences of not existing in ways that are kind of disorienting. Where it's like, oh, there's that wheel again. It seems like I'm back in the laundry machine from before, and it's undoing itself without will. It's actually as a result of losing will, not using will. So
Oh, that's beautiful language. Yeah, Joseph. And that's the tragic comedy of it all.
yeah.
You know, and if we zoom out here, every ancient tradition became of spiritual of the East
Mm-hmm.
and the West. Every ancient spiritual tradition became obsolete on December 21st, 2012,
Mm.
because all of those arose and festered and were defined and got out as dharma into the world under the aegis of a yang-based divinity that supported exactly these kinds of either ors.
Mm-hmm.
Either ors. Yang is substantive, and it's a column, and it exists inside of another space, but there's a columnness to it. A good way, yang divinity is like a vertical eddy or current
Mm-hmm.
in the ocean, not a horizontal one, but a vertical one.
Mm-hmm.
It still has a divinity around it, but it's a yang version of it. Whereas the rest of the ocean, not the singularity of this vertical current, that's all yin divinity. So when yin divinity came on board, all of these errors of an assumptions became pellucid or available for seeing the limits of.
Yeah.
They got us to a certain place, but as Joseph mentioned right before the podcast started, identity came into being before, and not even knowing it was going to be a paradigm to serve a yin orientation
Mm-hmm.
that would become wind at our backs after 2012. So, and so yet these traditions persist for younger souls who need them on their ladder, or ladder going down or up. Just, well, in Zen, it's the ladder down into a white hole, and a ladder up to golden deliverance in the West. Um, who still need ladders instead of centerings,
Mm-hmm.
spiral centerings. It's not in that dimension of ladders anymore. Transcendence is a ladder that way. Um, Religion and other points of view that will try to keep you out of a black hole. That's you have to go down into the black hole to realize there's a black hole, a hole
Mm-hmm.
like hell or sin or and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, identity foresaw without knowing it foresaw. I didn't see that it was going to happen in 2012. I knew something was going to happen, but it wasn't until the first year that we finally grokked and it was breathed that could this have been the thing? And it
Mm-hmm.
became so superlatively obvious.
Explained a lot of stuff that was going on. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So
By the way, my
let's go.
Saturn major period in Vedic astrology, which typically your life falls apart around that, any way in which you're off track falls apart in the beginning of people, it's 19 years. That began in 2011 for me. So that's an interesting timing I signed up for.
Oh,
I,
no
I've
accident
somehow,
there, bud.
my soul decided to hitch its wagon to that changeover and be like, yeah, and you're going to hit the reset button along with the rest of the cosmos somehow. So,
Oh
yeah.
boy. All right, let's complete and get this
So who was
teacher.
this?
Yeah. So I'm if the person if I try to decode this person, this awakened teacher has to have a sympathy and an access to emotivity, or else this person wouldn't even talk in those terms. In other words, it's giving emotivity and thought, however blended it is and inappropriately from our point of view, it's still giving it credence.
Yeah. So it's not
That it
J. Krishnamurti. It's not
no,
Nisargadatta. It's not. It's
no,
not. As discussed, it's not scorched earth Zen.
no, it's not. It's a softer version, and I would imagine that this teacher has more yin than yang
Mm-hmm.
in that way,
Mm-hmm.
because of that. The very not only the softness of the taking it seriously, these unenlightened states, enough to try to get underneath them and help them. A lot of compassion too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
this teacher would radiate compassion and softness, as opposed to some of the dour kinds of
Like a John
dynamics of a Zen
DeRuyter.
teacher. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, just oh God, give me a break.
Yeah. Not
So
Andrew Cohen. Not John DeRuyter. Not.
no, it's got to be Ajya.
That's
It's got to be
correct.
Ajya.
That's it. This is Adyashanti from his book, The End of Your World, Chapter 5, talking about the integration of awakening.
Oh yeah, I never read any of his books,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a perturbation in the force, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like a younger brother to me that I wish I could get closer to, and maybe that'll happen in the future. But it had to be Aja, because there's a tenderness in his motives here, his intentions, we would say.
Yeah.
And so, uh, and would he qualify, Joseph? I don't know that much about him in the lineage he's in. Is that an Advaita tradition that
I
he's in?
don't
What is it?
I don't remember. I don't think so. His teacher was um I don't have to Google it. It was supposed to be Zen, but
Oh,
I don't know. I'm just Googling that now. It was a woman, just some random seeming woman in Silicon Valley that he was studying with. I don't remember who his teacher was. I don't think it was Advaita Vedanta, um,
hmm.
because it's
Yeah,
like,
it's a little too touchy feely for even
yeah.
Advaita.
Well,
Yeah,
if it were Advaita, I think the spiritual bypassing would be far more overt, right?
yeah, Yeah.
and
It wouldn't go down to
invalidative.
that small
Yeah.
of a dynamic. Yeah, that's
So
right.
it seems like I mean I heard someone once say that they thought Ajahn was a reincarnation of Dogen, who was a
Oh,
big inquiry guy. So like I I mean there's no I mean Ajahn enlightened at 25. I mean he had three big
yeah.
awakenings to enlighten that early. I
Yeah,
mean
that's tough. Yeah.
it's yeah
Oh,
that it's
yeah.
tough, but for sure there were some past life influences there that I think came in.
Sure. Funny you say that because I was just fishing in the past for some noted teacher, and it's not Dogen was a hard ass.
Uh huh. Oh, that's right.
This guy saw through all substance, all colors into the black and white framework of things. I remember the dude, but it has to be someone partway between sainthood and sagehood in our paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, and what he's done is taken that mix of compassion based, not uh, duality as illusion. It's there, but it's not the central focus. There's a compassion driving everything. So that has to be his past life had to be in a mix of
Hindu,
sage and saint.
something
It has to
Hindu.
be Hindu. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
was wondering if it was Advaita, but it's not because you're right. It's Advaita Vedanta is drier. It's not
Yeah.
as moist
Yeah.
with compassion, right?
Yeah.
That's why I can see why you investigated him so thoroughly because it's really alluring the kind of bandwidth he can combine. But ultimately, we would say, bless his compassionate heart, he's dead ending in this treatise that you offered us today, Joseph. This is
Mm-hmm.
a dead end.
Yeah.
And I don't think this lifetime he'll be able to see the dead end and dead
Dead
endedness of it.
endedness. Yeah. Her name,
Yeah.
his teacher's name was Arvis Joan Justy, and she's listed as a Zen teacher. So,
Well, Zen though, you know how rare it is to find scorched earth Zen. There are Zen temples that call themselves
oh yeah,
Zen temples with 20-foot gold statues of the Buddha.
right.
That is just ridiculous. That's not Zen. So I can imagine that why he
Oh, wait.
he
I
would be
just got
in.
something more here. This is real time Googling. So, Ajitanchi's teacher, her teacher was a guy named Hakuyo Taizan Meizumi. He was a Japanese Soto Zen Buddhist priest. And I don't remember the difference between Rinzai and Soto Zen, but that's pure Zen. Soto Zen's pure Zen. Um,
It is, but our version of pure Zen would not ever put the two words Zen priest together.
right. Oh, yes, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So this has got to be a more slanting on the more esoteric form. Like there's three levels to Zen Buddhism. You've got the pure exoteric form, which is lighting candles and praying in front of the Buddha
And
to
a
their
shit ton of
ancestors.
transcendence. So
Oh,
much.
oh
Those are the people who
God.
just become transcendence. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there's the next level of the teachers
Yeah.
that way. Uh, and they've got some of the accoutrements, but the rarity is the pure Zen, where there's no temples, there's no
Yeah. Yeah.
pagodas,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's no statues, there's no gold, there's nothing but that which is this in this moment, nothing to change, only to realize that nothing changes in the very base bandwidths of consciousness out of which consciousness arises. And of course, they can't answer how did dualistic consciousness or dualism itself arise out of non-dualism. But then we get
Yeah.
back to the
Uh,
another whole interesting
more real time
discussion.
research here. The Wikipedia page for Hakuyu Taizan Masumi says he was born in 1931. In 1956, he was sent to the U.S. to serve as a priest for a Japanese American congregation in L.A. He was holding zazen in the 1960s, founded the Zen Center of Los Angeles in 67. He studied koans with a guy named Osaka. So it was a combined Soto style with it's a combined Rinzai and Soto
Yeah,
style. But here's what's
yeah,
super interesting. Matsumi publicly admitted he was an alcoholic in 1983, coinciding with revelations that he had been having sex. Hold on. Coinciding with, I don't know if this is a quote, but this is what it says. Coinciding with revelations that he had been having sexual relationships with some of his female students. Oh, not necessarily his revelations. He probably other people's revelations. The way I read it was like he suddenly realized he was having sex with his students.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah,
there's the answer right there.
yeah.
And that's exactly what I wanted to sort of get into here at the end to tie
Mm-hmm.
all this together with Shakti. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what, how can I say? Let's start it this way.
Wait, but let me say one more thing. First of all,
Sure, go
just
ahead.
so as not to throw Aja completely under the bus, I have a
No.
huge love for the guy. I
Hmm.
was a devout, I don't know, devout, a diligent student of Aja for about 5 years,
Yeah.
and it was exactly what I needed.
Hmm.
His combination of sage and saint really matches how it's wired up in
Yeah.
me because I
Yeah.
can't really separate the two.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
that's a soul species thing, possibly a
Yeah.
Raphaelite thing.
Raphaelite thing.
I
Yeah,
can't separate
absolutely.
them. So it was the perfect frequency for me. And I just like that he was metaphysically fairly rigorous based on
Yeah.
standards out
Yeah.
there, which
Hmm.
could meet my mind's thirst for sense, but at the same time get me out of my mind. So
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
was my awakening was during a retreat with him,
Yeah.
and so it was exactly what I needed. So I just, and I really wish I've sent him emails. I wish we could help because he's definitely dead ended. He
Yeah.
retired. I think he's in a lot of pain, and
Yeah.
so it's not to run him down at all. It's just to talk about the limits of the
No.
paradigm.
Just the metaphysics. It's not
Yeah,
him we're criticizing, folks. We say this a lot. It's the metaphysics.
yeah.
This man is beautiful. I've seen two or three YouTubes of him, and this is a beautiful soul. And he just has a premature, metaphysically unsober union of sage and saint.
Yeah.
Um, but that compassion that he exudes is a heady aroma, that
Mm-hmm.
a perfume that will get people who are tired of dour kinds of John de
Yeah.
Reuters. Uh, but there's a reason why these characters do the sex thing, and that's what I want
Oh,
to
okay.
finish with.
Go on.
But this is really good because I have the same exact, I have nothing but respect for the guy. And since most people aren't ready for the whole enchilada that identity is offering, identity says, have at it, Aja. All you people stay with it because that's where you need to be. That's where you're there. And stay open if you
Mm-hmm.
can, if you can. So we
Mm-hmm.
support everything is good, but you can't, a 7-year-old's class isn't the same as a senior in high school's class. One is still working on long division, and the other one's working trig and calculus. So it's all math. It's all
Yeah. Oh,
good,
that's a good metaphor. Yeah. It's
right?
all math and it's
So
all important. And
it's
there's a
all
developmental
important.
sequence too.
And there's the development and that's what Wilbur tried to put on,
Yeah.
but his five just completely overwhelmed
It
it.
just became a
Oh,
mental,
oh God,
machination that it's,
exercise.
yeah,
Yeah.
exercise, right?
So, one symptom of these old paradigms that should be obsolete by now, but aren't, a lot of them are rooted in India, where what they call swamis, which are enlightened abhidhuts. I mean, they're enlightened, and they're truly enlightened in a sense, because what we call Shakti, identity would say, is really a coherent field. It's a coherent field in a certain bandwidth that will dissonate with other less pure bandwidths in followers. In other words, you will get people around a truly enlightened Swami, for example, who will get headaches or upset stomachs or feel somehow not comfortable in their presence. And the ones that feel comfortable in the presence will then call them your holiness,
Uh,
your holiness, right?
uh,
Your holiness. But what identity would say that a Swami of that ilk is exactly in his arc of soulful evolution at his utmost Peter principle.
mhm.
In other words, he's hit the top level of his attainment segment. And at that top, you can look totally together. You have this amazing shakti because you're at the top of your Peter principle, not knowing the next lifetime you're going to be at the bottom of the next one, right? And so when people get lulled and seduced by shakti, what you're really seeing here, from identity's point of view, and the Swami's got to be exactly where they are, no criticism of them. That shakti is actually a sunburn of the soul. Just like tanning looks like, wow, that person looks so healthy. They're outdoors, blah, blah. It's a damage to the dermis and the epidermis, right?
Yeah, because if you want to have that piercing, but at the same time far away look in your eyes all the time, you have to do what Aj is talking about, which is constantly re-up and re-identify and release. Then you become that releasing, which is what the paradigm says you are in the first place.
Yeah. Right.
And then you become that, and then you need people to book airline travel for you because you can't use a computer anymore, or you get lost walking around the block like J. Krishnamurti would,
like I did too. Yeah,
or
exactly.
like you said about your Zen teacher. I couldn't remember if you just ate a bowl of potato chips already or not.
Yeah, even the last potato chip.
What is a last potato chip? What does that mean?
Right. So the point here, the other way to say this, that they're at their Peter principle apex of their particular attainment bandwidth arc. And there's lots more to go after that. But those are defined as the final solution.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody is holier than anyone else. Everything is sacred. Just some things are more sacred than others. But if you can get that, when I say sunburn of the soul, that shakti has freedom to move specifically because chakras 1 and 3 have been disengaged.
Oh, okay. Sure. 3 is the self.
The hara has been unplugged, and the first chakra to the earth has been unplugged.
I see where you're going now. I won't spoil it. Keep going.
So, and this happens a lot, not just with swamis, but this happens like with this teacher of the teacher of the teacher of Aja. When your 1 is disengaged, inactivated, and your 3 is inactivated, you got a ton of shakti being able to pour through. But it's because these are damaged, not because they are active. And when 1 and 3, here's what Joseph is referring to, when the 1 and 3 have been disengaged, guess what 2 has to do? It has to overcompensate for the unplugged 1 and 3, and that is what happens in all the sexual mischief. 2 is Osho did the same thing.
Yeah,
he was even earlier at 17 or 18. He had his awakening.
Oh, really? So this is also why this is not very far fetched, is because it's extremely common to in even run of the mill EBE with non-awakened people to find over-identifications and over-sexualizations. That's mostly in men, but not only.
Not only.
When you have an unhealthy, 1 and 3 are the most problematic chakras in some ways.
Yes.
And the natural aliveness and sexuality in 2 makes a great compensation fuel source for the protector to draw upon. Lots of people do that.
What else can it swim in anymore, Joseph? The protector can't swim in 1 and 3 anymore. So it's going to need to swim in 2 as a compensation. That's why these are woven in, all the sexual mischief of an authority to a student. That's as bad as a father to a daughter.
Yeah.
You just don't do those authority games. That's not sober. And if you find someone who's got a ton of shakti but isn't sexually mischievous at all, well, that would be the ideal, wouldn't it, Stace? Not really. That means they've got 1, 2, and 3 disengaged. And they've got even a harder time in the next bandwidth to retrieve 1, 2, and 3 and integrate them into the enlightenment that happened in 7.
And that's why Aja is in part so yin, probably because he's transcended a lot of his sexuality. And he's extremely accessible and safe feeling, but he doesn't really feel like much of a man.
No.
Adida felt more like a man than Aja did. Same
Oh
with
yeah.
John
Hey,
DeReuter or Andrew
yeah.
Cohen or what's his
Yeah.
name, Jack Cornfield, all these kinds of people,
Oh,
Ken
so
Wilber.
much Yang,
Yeah,
so much Yang, and all of them. So if you're if you're impressed with Shakti, I offer that's fine. Be impressed with it. But in the end, all of this is partial enlightenments. And if you're at the Peter Principle and you're at the top end, you can be a really notable soul and affect a lot of people. But no one is taught out there that there are gradations. That's out there, but not in the way that we would see gradations. And so Adya's dead-ended and has one of the most aromatic and perfumed versions of enlightenment there is. It's compassionate, it's warm, but you could not, from a truly enlightened state, use language like he used in that treatise that piece that you brought out.
yeah.
And the same thing for the swamis. Please, or the any Indian advocate that is exuding Shakti, it's the cheap seats that get impressed with that. They're young souls who need to have someone give them love,
It's like a sugar high.
and like a sugar high. Yeah, and
Hmm.
that's okay. Stay there. No criticism of anyone who's into this. Just an introduction of an idea that it's temporary and not the whole enchilada. What if that were true? That we would just say, what if that Shakti driven thing isn't the end? It sure looks like it. What if it isn't?
It's so interesting. I was just remembering I probably was 22. Yeah, 22, 23. And I was living in Berkeley, California. And I had a housemate who was, probably 15 years, maybe 20 years older than I was. And really had been around the spiritual block. And I was just beginning, I was an Aikidoist. That was pretty much, I just started a vague interest in spirituality, which mostly seemed very woo woo and bullshit to me. But and so he kind of took me by the hand. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna take you somewhere." And I'm like, "Where are we going?" It's an Indian teacher. I think you'll be interested, but come with me. He saw me as he was like an uncle to me. So he'd be like, "Come on, it'll be fun."
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I went, and it was this Indian dude. I don't know what his name was. Probably had a G at the end of it, something G, Papa G, Mama G, whatever it was. And I remember just like people had their hands up, like catching the vibe of the guy, and there was a lot of smiling, and I just didn't feel a damn thing. It was completely uncompelling to me. Now, I don't think I was opened up enough to be able to feel the Shakti there that was going on, but it also, the whole concept didn't appeal to me at all. And I had read like half a dozen Zen books at age 17 or 18, and this was like, no, this is not it. This, whatever they're doing with their hands up and smiling, it was
I get it.
Hindu. It was like a Hindu
Yeah.
Buddhism thing.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I guess I had been there and done that already. But Aja, on the other hand, when I heard him speak, it was like, oh yeah, this is for me.
Yeah.
So everybody's got to do what they got to do. But I think, when I was studying under Aja, I had the meta of his paradigm from you. So
Yeah.
I could see the transcendence, and I would protest sometimes, like, I don't know, this kind of feels like transcendence. Like, okay, try it anywhere, and I will. But I never got hooked all the way because I had that meta. And I
Yeah.
think that's all we're calling for. Like, hey,
Yeah.
everybody, do whatever you're drawn to do, but
Yeah.
have a meta
Exactly.
picture of its metaphysics so that when you dead end, if you dead end, you can unpack why, rather than just willfully go at the same paradigm more, which is what really hurts people.
Yeah. And Joseph, isn't that exactly the result of a teacher not including upfront what the metaphysics of the teaching is based on?
Yeah.
All the people have to go on is the presence of that teacher, and it's mostly agreeable
Yeah.
unless what's her name is your teacher.
Gangaji?
Yeah, Gangaji is your
I don't know
teacher.
how I
Then it's
guess
not
that.
always so it's not so pleasant.
Like,
But
yeah,
you,
how many Buddhistic psychologists are saying, okay, welcome to your first session. So just so you know what we're going to be doing here, just like you said, the parts of you that think they're real and are really carrying trauma, yeah, it's all illusory. We're going to help them see that. Yeah, let's see if there's a session 2 after that happens, right?
oh God, and ask if an enlightened teacher sanctions the reality of a Buddhist psychologist, there's a big box that can't be checked for enlightened sobriety because it might be a traditions track of sobriety, but it wouldn't be sober from an identity point of
as
view.
Gangaji once said, if you think you need therapy, then you need therapy.
Yeah. Oh,
Ugh.
God. Oh, these folks have such a surprise. Not Adya. Adya, when he passes this life, he'll go, oh, at least I got some of it really right.
Oh yeah, he's helped a
Yeah,
shit ton of
he's
people. He should be
so
proud.
great. Yeah,
I've heard Ajay say different than Gangaji. He said about enlightenment that some people need to do personal emotional work on their path to enlightenment, and he says, "Yeah, I don't do that. I don't offer that. If people are drawn to that, they should investigate that. That's as far as he goes."
And that's generosity of spirit right there, right? That's so evocative and alluring.
Where the
We
Advaita
would
Vedanta
say,
thing is, well, if you think you need therapy, then I guess you need therapy. Like, wow, why do I suddenly feel
exactly.
cold when I say that? It's like, oof, ow.
Oh, exactly. We would say it's a requirement to do personal work to have a sober enlightenment.
Yeah.
You got to get sober in the human before you get sober in the spirit, because human and spirit are not dividable. They're all one gestalt.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that at all. That the thinking you can enlighten without homeopathically doing emotional work is a human spirit split. I didn't think of that before. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the state of the most advanced stuff out there beside identity.
Yeah.
Really, that describes it in some percentage of accuracy.
There's one more thing I wanted to say related to that. When you started that sentence, I don't know, about 10 minutes ago, when you said since 2012, all paradigms, blah, blah, blah. What I thought you were going to say, you said prior to 2012, all paradigms, ... What I thought you were going to say is all spiritual paradigms were applying their spiritual truths and trying to get at an emotional healing mechanism, which is also true.
Oh, that's true also. Yeah.
And
all of them are attempts.
Yeah, and that's what Ajay was doing in this passage. She was like, okay, well, what I got is this kind of form of Zen, this kind of oneness-y Hinduistic form of Zen, and I see these emotions and thoughts coming up. How do I point this at emotion? And that's what else would he do? That's what they would do.
God. And again, you make me awaken to another iteration of it, is that's the even if it's semi-unconscious or unconscious totally, that's what they're doing. That's the reality of the thing behind the curtain, wanting to become clearer right there. And that's what identity picked up on, is the substrate that all of these paradigms arise out of. Wow, good one.
They're all trying to deal with in these messy, weird ways. It's they've been throwing ink on the invisible emotional body so that it can be seen.
Oh, that's a great metaphor. Throwing ink, like the Kevin Bacon movie where he played the Invisible Man. They threw paint on him or something, or water to see where he was.
Failing to deal with, like when Zen fails to deal with emotions and breaks 1 and 3 and creates sexual mischief, it is serving to illuminate what is actually there, just like Trump's cabinet appointees are serving to illuminate that they don't know what they're doing.
Here we're rewarding patriarchal criminal incompetency. I'm going to reward you for loyalty. That's what a Don in the mafia does. They reward loyalty, not competency.
So the congressman with the most amount of investigations happening about him becomes the attorney general. Yeah, that makes sense. The most likely criminal of those 580 people or whatever becomes the AG. Sure, yeah, of course.
And that is exactly what we said last podcast. These are the mechanisms that have so much dissonance with the underlying reality of yin divinity. They have to collapse under their own weight because there's nothing supporting it in the background. It's Geffians have taken over the U.S. government. So what else could happen except this darkness?
Well, we'll see. It's going to be
Joseph,
a fun ride. Yeah. This was wonderful. Thank you for going on this ride with me in this passage and in every other meaning as well, and taking me on the ride.
You're so welcome, Joseph. Your hunger for the reality of realities makes you a maniac. That how can you not love this guy? I mean, I love this guy so much.
Oh, thanks. I feel that, and the maniacalness, mania. That's the word, but maniacalness is a little truer feeling. The mania. I wish I could turn it off and take a break for like a year or two, but it just keeps keeping on. So I guess it must be real, or it's dystrophy, and I'll figure that out.
Or he's both, and
or
you
both.
Figure him out. It's when you have pattern persistency of that depth and length. Something's real about it. That's all you can really say.
There's definitely in my unraveling of will, I'm definitely not doing nearly as much as I used to. But when I heard this passage in the middle of the night, it was like, oh my God, we got to dissect this one. Wow.
Well, thank you for having the acuity to notice what this could unveil in decodement.
Yeah.
So thank you, Joseph, for that.
All right. Listeners, thank you so much for hanging with 108 episodes. 108, that's an auspicious number because it's the multiplication of 18, which is the number of life in Hebrewism and whatever, and and other things. 108, I think it goes even further back than that. But anyway.
And Bree and I just celebrated our 18th anniversary.
Nice.
This past week.
Mazel tov.
Yeah. No, thank you. Wow. Yeah. That's another whole nice story. So anyway, thanks, Joseph.
Thank you.
As always.
You're so welcome. Thank you, listeners. Tune in next time. I don't know what we'll be talking about, but it'll be cool. See you then. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. To learn more about Stace Barron and Identity, please visit identity.org. To learn more about Joseph Shapiro, visit clearandopen.com. Until next time, we wish you well on your journey.